Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Paradise. I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week here, we watch a new film and we discuss it in depth, with each month having a new theme. We're currently in the month of April, and the theme of April is Edgar Wright Movies. And this is our fourth and final week in our Edgar Wright month. We have talked about Shaun of the Dead, we have talked about Hot Fuzz, we talked about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and now we are talking about 2017's Baby Driver. I am again your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'm joined by a great panel. With me is Matt Smith.
Hello.
Hi, Matt.
We're back to just us again.
We're back to the dynamic duo.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's going to be, it's as the month started.
Of course.
So we close it. So, before we get into our spoiler discussion, and this is a spoiler discussion, we are talking about this film as if you watched it with us last night. Before we get into it, Matt, what are your first impressions of Baby Driver, having seen it again last night, and roughly how many times have you seen the film?
Oh, I feel like this is the second time I've seen it in full, but I feel like I've just casually watched every scene from this movie multiple times. You just for some reason you just want to watch the opening scene of Baby Driver, because why not? You know?
Naturally.
I don't know. It's interesting because I think this is the first movie that came out after I was okay, I'm Edgar Wright's pretty cool. I'm down with this guy. And so it was I figure out okay, Edgar Wright's my favorite director. Then this movie comes out, and I don't know. I feel like that was interesting. No, but I really like it. It's up there. It's a lot less subtle, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as... How do I describe it?
I feel like you've said that about every single Edgar Wright movie this month. You've started with, I don't know how to describe it.
I don't.
How do I talk about this?
Why do I like the things that I like? I don't know. Because they're cool. I don't know.
Because they're good.
But, yeah, it's not as flashy. It's but everything is still there.
Yeah.
Everything Edgar Wright is still there. It's just not punching you in the face. It's like a light slap instead.
Yeah. So I have seen Baby Driver, oh God, I think this is either fifth or sixth time that I've seen this movie.
It's a big number.
I saw it a whole bunch when it first came out. I think I saw it 3 times in theaters, a couple of times on home video. Yeah, so this would be number 6.
Nice.
I love this movie. This is my favorite Edgar Wright movie. It honestly jumped into when I saw it, 2017 this came out. Yeah. Just already a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago when I saw it, it then jumped into my top 20 all-time favorite films. That's how much I love this movie.
Nice.
I think it is I think it's a masterpiece. I think it is a damn brilliant movie. And I can't wait to talk about it and dissect it a little bit here today. Yeah. So there are definitely... So I'll restate this for people listening. I think I've said this on every episode. As this month is Edgar Wright movies, we are approaching this month in our discussions. We're approaching them differently than we have with previous months. Usually we talk about a genre of film or a type of film, but this is the first time we are really going into the filmography of a director and looking at not just each film individually, but what correlation, what patterns do we see as we look at that director's filmography going through. And so I said that we watched Shaun of the Dead, we watched Hot Fuzz, we watched Scott Pilgrim, and now we're here at Baby Driver. And I feel like we've had a lot of comparisons between all three of those as we've talked. But when we get to Baby Driver, this is really the movie where Edgar Wright's style and his approach to filmmaking goes in a completely different direction. To me, it almost feels like because it's safe to say that his previous films are unconventional. Mm-hmm. The way he makes them, the style of them, they're very unconventional. They kind of already exist with a layer of meta-ness. It already exists on a different plane of reality than a lot of other films do. It just immediately adheres to his style. And it almost feels like with Baby Driver, somebody came to Edgar Wright and said, hey, we want you to make a conventional movie. We want you to make a conventional film that exists in our reality, that does this, that does this. We want you to make a conventional film. And Edgar Wright made a conventional film as much as Edgar Wright can. I don't know if I articulated it exact. I think the way I said it makes it sound like a negative thing, but the way I see this movie as is I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. This is the first Edgar Wright movie that is not inherently a comedy.
You're right.
Every single one of the films that we've seen, they are all comedies, and then they have other things building on top of that. Horror and spoof comedy, specifically in Shaun of the Dead. More of like a dramatic turn and some action in Hot Fuzz. Lots of action in Scott Pilgrim.
Right.
Baby Driver is not a comedy. There's certainly comedy in it, but it takes itself seriously, more seriously than a lot of other of Edgar Wright's films do. They kind of almost inherently and innately don't take themselves too seriously, especially Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
And I think Hot Fuzz is really where an Edgar Wright film takes itself more seriously than others. But here we have Baby Driver, which is very much taking itself seriously. It has comedy in it, but it is not inherently in its DNA a comedy. And I think that's where kind of the more of the convention comes in. More of the conventional storytelling techniques, more of the conventional, especially compared to editing and transitions in, say, Shaun of the Dead. A lot more conventional. We don't have, like, the punch-in transitions. We don't have a lot of those kind of crazier edits and crazier montages in this. It's more conventionally approached. But in the approach is the design, is the skilled hand of Edgar Wright saying, okay, and this is not at all how it was approached. This was all his idea. This is how it manifests itself in my head. He's like, okay, you want me to make a conventional movie? You don't want me to do a spoof film? You don't want me to do Scott Pilgrim, which is just absolute crazy madness? You don't want me to do that? Fine, I'll give you your conventional film. But I am going to make it the most unconventional, conventional film I can possibly make. And in that, I think, is where Baby Driver is so brilliant. Because at its surface, and I know I'm talking a lot on this, but I have to get my thing out first. I always allow myself for a monologue for every episode. But on this surface, Baby Driver, you can kind of just look at it as a very surface level film. It hits these beats, it hits these notes, it goes to the places where it should go. But it's once you start to dissect it and really go underneath the surface, that is where there is so many layers to Baby Driver. And that's where you really see Edgar Wright is in all the details, in all the layers. And I think that's where Baby Driver really stands out. So, Matt, do you agree? Any of what I just said, do you agree with? Do you see it a different way?
No, don't worry. I was taking notes on everything you said so I could hit all the things. Now, I do like the idea that someone was like, went up to Edgar Wright, like, I bet you can't do this. I bet you can't make a conventional film. You one-trick wonder. Mm-hmm. And he was like, all right, I'll see you in like a couple of years. And then he did it.
Yeah.
No, you're totally right. And it's definitely, I mean, watching it this time, I actually did notice more of like Edgar Wright's more sort of style, like the wipe, the hidden wipe transitions. There's actually a few of them in this movie that I didn't actually notice.
Yeah.
But
it's so much more subtle.
Yeah, but unlike something like Scott Pilgrim, where it's like a very apparent skateboarder going past the screen, it's just like a dark figure.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't notice. And then like the one, I think it was when he's on foot, when he's running, there's actually a lot of them right after each other where he's like going past like I guess sort of columns, and it happens like 4 or 5 like after each other where it keeps going in. And I didn't notice that the first time I watched it. Maybe it coming from watching Edgar Wright for his whole month.
Yeah.
But they're definitely harder to see, which I appreciate. Yeah. I think it's awesome that even though he doesn't want it to be super apparent, that they're still all there.
Yeah.
And it's still like, and I always like think of this movie as like where Edgar Wright this whole time had been visual. This time he was like, he put visual on the side and was like, let's just do all audio because why not? like the amount of times that you just have bullets like sing to the beat. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we're gonna talk about this, but like how the stories about how like the editors were on set during this like whole movie.
Editing as they were filming. Because it's one of those things when you think about any of these scenes, if they mess up in the filming of it, like off by a second, it messes up the whole thing. The only way that you can film this movie is to film, immediately begin editing, realizing, wait, that doesn't work, go back and refilm it. Yeah, it's crazy.
I can't imagine it. Like, one thing I like about editing is be able to be in my room all alone and just like, not have to deal with anything, just go in and do it. I couldn't imagine editing on set. Oh my God.
So this is far more of a subtle film for Edgar Wright. Especially like when we're coming off something like Scott Pilgrim, which Scott Pilgrim does not know the word subtle.
They do not, no.
And this film is so subtle, and I think what's interesting about it is that with a lot of the films we've watched this month, the editing of it specifically, let's go into the editing. The editing is all just like, it's very weird and it's out there and it's apparent and it's obvious, and it's part of the driving force of the film. But with Baby Driver, what drives the editing is the music. And so it doesn't stand out as much as it compared to a Shaun of the Dead or a Hot Fuzz or Scott Pilgrim, because those are not being driven by anything other than the fact that they're part of the movie driving it forward. But the editing in Baby Driver is almost masked in a way by the music. And so I think whereas those films kind of have an sense of unreality to them, because the editing kind of breaks that real life element of it, in this film, that's driven by the music, and so it almost kind of covers that over, and you're more accepting of it. And I think that's kind of where the style of the film it's almost like a pseudo-conventional. It feels like it's conventional, and then once you start to pick it apart, you realize just how unconventional everything actually is. It's really quite interesting.
Yeah, I like it, and it really does show like the skill and the talent behind this movie between Edgar Wright and his editors. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you were to just show someone Edgar Wright, they're his movies, it'd be really easy to just like sort of discount him in a way. Be like, oh, he just does all these like flashy gimmicks, and if he wanted to do some real traditional editing, he couldn't do that.
Yeah.
He couldn't make a movie like that. I feel like that's
Edgar Wright doesn't understand story.
Yeah, he's all flashy. He's all
exactly. He doesn't have any narrative depth. To him. You could call him Edgar Wright's just a gimmick, similar to how people could call Wes Anderson. Like, he's not actually good. He's just weird and does weird stuff. And you could say on a similar spectrum, Michael Bay, he's just explosions and women. I was gonna say something worse, but I couldn't say it on the air. That's all he is. He has nothing else offering. I agree. You could say the same thing about Edgar Wright.
You could say all these things, but then you have something like Baby Driver where he just kind of disproves that.
Yeah.
Or he's like, no, I can do this. It's that separation between is it like a gimmick that he relies on, or is it just his style? I mean, yeah, you can be over flashy by accident, but you can also be flashy on purpose. And I feel like that's something maybe some people just have like a disconnect. Hopefully people who see this movie kind of realize that like you can be like super apparent in film. Like I really appreciate when people would take like full advantage of what you can do. And this is just a perfect example of how you can take full advantage of what you can do with film, but not be super like flashy about it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And it just really goes to show like how good Edgar Wright is.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember I can barely remember any editors' names anyway, and there's two of them.
Yeah.
They also had Scott Pilgrim, so I should know that.
The fact that this movie did not win Best Editing, to me, that's a snub. The fact that I, Tonya won... I, Tonya is a great film.
I didn't see
I, Tonya was my number one favorite movie 2017. I, Tonya was my number 4. That movie is great. Is the editing in that movie great? Yes. It is great editing. It's really good. Should it have won over Baby Driver, which is like... that Baby Driver does not work if it doesn't have the editing. That movie, I mean, okay, you can make the argument no movie works if it's not edited. Granted, I understand that.
You're just watching you're just like watching like 40 hours of just raw footage.
I understand that logistical part, but follow with me. Baby Driver does not work if not for the editing.
Yeah, it's not
the
same.
Editing makes the movie.
Yeah, it's not the same movie.
Possible, exactly. If you do not have, I feel like you could any kind of editor could sit down with the footage of I, Tonya and probably edit together the movie we got. You could not do that with Baby Driver. You could not take just any editor, sit down, and make something like Baby Driver. That requires skilled editing. And so I never understood.
Yeah.
I was like, Baby Driver should have won that over, like, completely.
I think there's something to be said when stuff like editing, and you can see in other movies where like we're editing in cinematography, like they add to characters. And I think you have this with Baby, where not only does the story tell you that he's super into music and that he drives some music, but you see him throughout the movie doing things to the beat all the time. That's a whole other layer of establishing that that's not just he likes music.
Yeah, that's
like music is a part of him, which I don't think you get across just by saying that.
Yeah.
Music's like a part of him, man. You can just okay.
And even just details, like just tiny little details. Something I didn't even pick up until like my third viewing, but it's one of my favorite things about this movie is that whenever Baby is not listening to music, you constantly hear the ringing of the thing. And even if he has one earbud in listening to music, you can tell that the left speaker's playing the music and the right speaker has the ringing. Yeah. It's just constant throughout the whole film. It's little details like that just comprise this movie. And I think just make it absolutely a stunning achievement in filmmaking. Let's go through and actually, I want to talk about some individual scenes.
Okay.
I always say, I've been saying since I've seen this film for the first time, I do not know what is the more impressive feat in filmmaking, bigger accomplishment. The opening scene with the car chase and all the quick edits and the choreography and having the person drive the car in all the ways and setting up that whole scene and timing it to the music and all that. If that's more impressive, or the following one-take scene of Baby just walking around the street. That's all the scene is he just starts in one place, walks all the way around the street, and goes back. But it is some of the most mind-boggling, skilled, impressive, detailed, meticulously crafted filmmaking I have ever seen. And so you contrast these two scenes, one that is great because of how many cuts it has, because of how fast-paced it is, because of all the things they're able to accomplish and string together, and another scene that is so great because it doesn't cut, because it doesn't have all these fast-moving parts. It's just the contrast between these two scenes and just how equally impressive they are for completely different reasons. It's probably one of the best openings to a movie, like first two scenes I think I've ever seen.
You're right. I feel like the coffee scene was like Edgar Wright's being like, all right, I'll have one scene that like is over the top and like.
But even then, it's still subtle.
It is, but like.
I don't think you notice the graffiti unless I was told beforehand. Before I saw the movie, I was watching a review and people would say, when he's got, like, keep your eyes out for the graffiti because it'll be like the lyrics to the song. And so immediately my eyes drifted there. I don't think you notice that, or maybe not all of it. You don't notice it the first time you watch it if you don't know about it.
Yeah, I had a similar thing because before the first time I was going to watch it, this online movie reviewer named Nathanael Molnár told me to look out for the lyrics in the spray paint. So I know I'm in the same boat as you. I don't know if I would have saw it or not.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I feel like that's the most noticeable scene in the movie. Mm-hmm. But so I feel like they're two completely different. Is it the perfect metaphor for Edgar Wright and you have the very kind of conventional scene, but then you have the really cool one. But I don't know. I like them both.
Yeah, it's stunning.
They're drastically different in terms of like tone and like I don't know. One's like super intense. The other's super like laid back.
Yeah. It's also interesting what we claim to be great filmmaking. Like, we claim, like, the choreography of that opening scene and first of all, where everyone is, what everyone's doing, how on beat it is, how the actual driving of the car, the way it's shot, like, all that impressive filmmaking and incredibly impressive filmmaking, and how he brings that together. And then we also praise great filmmaking for just a person walking down the street and they're listening to music. But oh, wait, the graffiti in the background is the lyrics of the music. And then you realize, well, for him to be able to reach that point in that song, it has to be timed. And then you start noticing something else. And then you notice something else. And then you notice, oh, the sirens are matching on beat. And then this is on beat and that's on beat. And it's just... It's two completely different displays of grand filmmaking right next to each other. And it's just, yeah.
If somehow the first scene didn't catch you,
yeah,
the second one will.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I love that. I just love the attention to detail.
Yeah.
And it's something, it's different from his previous movies. He's still, like, in all of his movies, he has incredible attention to detail. But it's used in different ways, and it's done in different ways in his films, especially with Baby Driver.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say, I think, personally, I think the second scene is cool. I think it's like, I don't know. I think it's cooler, but I think the first scene is like, I wouldn't even imagine how you would start to film that.
Yeah.
Like, that's, like, ridiculous. Like, at least I can, like, explain what's going on in the second scene. Like, okay, it's timing, it's this is probably how they did it. Chances are some of, like, the weavings around, I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like some, like, maybe, like, the weaving around poles or, like, cars coming in was, like, all right, we need to stop him for this amount of time. Mm-hmm. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Or if those were put in beforehand, and then it was just timed along with those. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the second one, okay, there's a person in a car who's going absolutely nuts, and you have all these other cars. It's like, yeah, it's like there's just so much going on. Mm-hmm. How do you, like, I don't know, man.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's just, I can't imagine. And you have to, like, get those overhead shots and then all those crazy, like, shots of the car going nuts. Mm-hmm. The picture of the guy in, like, the go-kart rig above the actual car that's actually driving, mm-hmm. or, like, all the cameras on cars, like, that's...
Yeah.
Behind-the-scenes stuff like that is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
I don't understand any of it.
So last week, when we were talking about Scott Pilgrim, we'd said that we were remarking on how incredible the cast of that movie is. How do you compare the cast between Scott Pilgrim and the cast for this? Because this movie also has an all-star lineup in terms of actors.
I didn't know that. I mean, I know there's Jamie Foxx, right?
Yep,
that's his
Jamie
name.
Foxx.
I don't know names.
John Hamm, Jamie Foxx, Ansel Elgort, Lily James, Kevin Spacey is a part of this.
I didn't know if you were going to say it or not.
He's okay. F Kevin Spacey, but he's a great actor and he's great in this movie, and we have to talk about him if we're talking about Baby Driver. John Bernthal, just incredible cast members all around, and it's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, like, what's the guy's name who plays Baby?
Ansel Elgort.
I've never seen him in anything before this movie. Was he in anything?
He's been in some stuff. Yeah, he was in. Now I feel like I want to say he was in Fault in Our Stars. No, was he? Let me look that up.
He wasn't that same guy, was he?
Fault in Our Stars. Yep.
That was
Ansel
him?
Elgort. Fault in Our Stars.
What?
He was also in Divergent, The Insurgent, and so he's been in some stuff.
I didn't, like, first time I seen it, I didn't even know, like, I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
As compared to Michael Cera, like, I knew who Michael Cera was.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't really realize until, like, I feel like with Scott Pilgrim, like, watching the movie, it's like, oh, I know all of these people, but there are a lot of people in Baby Driver I don't know about.
Yeah.
And then there's a few, obviously, I know. But I'm not, like, I'm not as well versed in actors and actresses as you are.
Yeah, I'd say, It's tough. It's tough because they both have great lineup of actors, like fantastic, top notch. It's just like which combination, and I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, but
well, one has Michael Cera, one doesn't.
Yes, and one has Kevin Spacey and one doesn't. So that's another mark towards Scott Pilgrim. But what was I going to say? But the performances in this movie, I think are excellent. I think honestly, probably some of the best performances I've seen in any Edgar Wright movie.
Yeah,
I think Ansel Elgort perfectly plays Baby. I think you could tell that because I think, as far as I understand, Ansel Elgort comes from more of a musical background, so he is not the most dynamic actor. And so when you have someone who is not the most dynamic actor as the lead in your movie, you could tell that he was perfectly fit for the role because the role didn't require super dynamic acting.
Yeah.
I think Edgar Wright knew how to shape the character and how to shape the film so that that Baby was never in a position that required the most dynamic acting from Ansel Elgort. It was just kind of the nature of the role too. So for the character that he was playing, Ansel Elgort gave a fantastic performance. I love Lily James. I think she's excellent. I've seen her in a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. She's great as Deborah. I love her. And John Hamm. Love John Hamm. He's excellent. Jamie Foxx. Darling's the actor who plays Darling. I don't remember her name. But she's great. I've seen her in some other stuff as well. She's great. Kevin Spacey does give a really good performance in this movie.
Yeah.
He does. He does.
And he gets crushed at the end, so if that's any solace for people out there.
He got hit and he got backed over.
He also got shot.
Yeah, he got shot and he got ran over twice by a car. So if that's not symbolism for his career, as you mentioned last night, also it's very satisfying to watch it now and be like,
what was it he said? I think he said something about like, you're not allowed in that, like I'm not allowed in that place, but you are, like talking about the post office. I'm like, I'm sure he says that a lot now these days. It's probably not allowed.
You go in, I'm not allowed. But
hey.
But all the performances in this movie are so great, and they really work. Edgar Wright did a fantastic job really getting all these performances out of his actors.
Yeah, I don't know. I think everyone's great. Everyone's very like, I don't know, like a lot of them are very like also kind of just like they don't all pretty not very dynamic. They all sort of just kind of stay who they are throughout the movie.
Yeah,
like Bats is crazy from the beginning, and he is at the end.
Yeah.
Like, what does he do? He's just nuts.
Yeah, and Jamie Foxx plays him perfectly.
Yeah.
I think
I very much was scared of him.
Yeah. I think Bats was probably my favorite performance. I think Jamie Foxx gave my favorite performance as Bats in this.
He was great.
So having now, because I'm sure you've seen all these movies a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
Having now sat down and seen them in this order, the way that we've seen them, in the order that Edgar Wright made them, having seen what precedes Baby Driver in Edgar Wright's filmography, do you look at Baby Driver differently? I know you said you kind of looked at the style a little bit differently and all that kind of stuff, but is there anything big or glaring that you see differently with Baby Driver now, having seen all the films?
I mean, that we haven't already talked about? I mean,
we kind of scratched the surface a little bit. That.
Not really. Here's the thing. Like, it's very different from all of Edgar Wright's films, but it's still like my second or third favorite one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because I feel like at the core of it, I mean, he's just my favorite director for a very specific reason, and that's because I think he like really like goes beyond like, you know, conventional filmmaking. And, like, it's saying it's basically okay to try something. Mm-hmm. I like movies that are like, hey, someone says, like, hey, can we try this? And they're like, yeah, go for it. Let's see what, let's put it on film and see what happens.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like that is still in this movie. Like, it doesn't feel less Edgar Wright. It just looks less Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
Until you start looking into it. I don't know. I feel like it's very different, but there's nothing like wrong about it. Like nothing that feels nothing that feels Edgar wrong. Do we have like a cymbals, like a drum thing? Yeah, something like that. I was struggling how to say
add it in post.
I was trying to say it, but then I had the pun in my head. I was like, don't say it. And I was like, I can't figure out a better way of saying this.
Doesn't feel Edgar wrong.
Doesn't feel Edgar wrong. Stamp of approval. It's on the movie. There we go.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to leave now. So let's see you later. That's all for me.
Yeah.
I'll be here next week, probably alone.
I mean, and I think I think I have said this before earlier in the month, but my initial exposure to Edgar Wright as a director, it all started with Baby Driver. Wow. And so it's been a very interesting experience to start with that more mainstream, more conventional film and work backwards and seeing kind of where it comes from.
You started off on the easy one.
Yeah. It feels like to me Baby Driver is an evolution and a maturation for Edgar Wright as a filmmaker. When I watch Baby Driver, I feel like, okay. And especially when I was talking about for Hot Fuzz, how the story didn't really leap out to me and that it didn't feel like it had a very strong narrative. I think it feels like Baby Driver is kind of Edgar Wright, at least in my eyes, Edgar Wright saying, okay, I tried to have more of a conventional story, tried to have more of a conventional narrative with Hot Fuzz. It didn't work out as well as I wanted to. So try again when did Hot Fuzz come out? 2007?
Something like that, yeah.
So 10 years. So in over the course of 10 years, he learned how to refine his craft a little bit more, and he gives us something like Baby Driver. And I think it's Baby Driver's kind of shows to me that he is kind of moving on in his career. He's still going to be the Edgar Wright that we know and love, but he's making different kinds of movies now. His approach to films, his style has matured. It's evolved into something new, into something different. And I really honestly, as we go forward and we get, because he's got like a mystery thriller or horror, something along those lines coming out. He's got Baby Driver 2 coming.
That's surprising. I never expected him to do that.
Yeah, I think he's been writing the script, and I think it's going to happen.
If there was, to be totally honest, if there was any of his movies that I wanted to see what happened next, it would be Baby Driver, because that ending, like,
yeah,
you see him get out, but like, what happens?
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
I don't know. Like, is someone gonna come? Who's alive to come get him? Like, I'm trying to think of like, I was like, oh, someone from the character from the first movie is gonna like, still be mad at him or something. But like, who's left?
John Bernthal? He never died. Or he might have died. We don't know. We just never saw him again.
He said that if he never saw him again, it was because he was dead.
Well,
so
when did he die? We don't know. He could be alive. He could be around. He could be kicking.
But like, of the people that would like, be against him, none of them made it.
Who says it has to be an old enemy?
I mean, you're right. You're totally right. But I was thinking of like, who could it be? But like, anyone that was like against him didn't make it to the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So.
But all that to say is that
could be new.
All that to say is that I feel like we are going into a different kind of Edgar Wright, and that I really don't think we're going to get the Edgar Wright that we saw with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and frankly with Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
I don't think we're getting that Edgar Wright anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you can give me like another movie present, like a premise that seemingly would make as much sense to go like as crazy as he did for Scott Pilgrim as Scott Pilgrim. Like, I love Scott Pilgrim; it's my favorite movie of all time. But I don't want every single one of his movies to be like crazy ridiculous,
Yeah.
I mean, the premise of Scott Pilgrim and like everything about it makes total sense, but like Baby Driver doesn't make that much sense to be that crazy.
Yeah.
So like,
it would not fit with what the movie should be.
Yeah, no, I really do like this Edgar Wright where he has his way of doing things and he just scales it up or down based on what fits.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see. I imagine Baby Driver 2 will be similar to Baby Driver. I imagine he won't change what he does maybe that much up.
Yeah.
I feel like it'll probably stay within like the range of subtlety that he has. More,
it'll be consistent with Baby Driver. Yeah.
For this horror
thriller,
I have no idea. He could go anywhere with that.
Yeah, that'll be crazy.
I don't. Is there like a time frame for that to happen?
I don't know. Last I heard, he was kind of writing that movie and Baby Driver 2 simultaneously. He's going to do the horror thriller first.
Okay. I
think they might have cast someone. I don't know. I don't remember. I haven't heard anything about it in a little while. But I
have no idea. I don't know what to expect. Yeah. I can tell you that someone's probably going to walk across the screen and it's going to be a cut behind it. Because that's... I just realized there's no phone in Baby Driver.
Oh.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Baby Driver 2.
Yep, Baby Driver 2.
Just the phone coming.
That's where they retcon it. But yeah, I think gone are the movies of old for Edgar Wright. I think he's moving forward, and I think he's changing and evolving as a filmmaker, and I'm really interested. And I think that's what shows. That's really ultimately what proves Edgar Wright. And I think you were touching on this before. What proves Edgar Wright to be the master filmmaker that he is that he can evolve and that he can change as a director. And he doesn't just have to fall into that same camp, into that same area that he's been operating out of for so long. I think people kind of had similar talks about Christopher Nolan because Christopher Nolan was coming off of The Dark Knight Rises and he made Interstellar. And people are like, okay, what's next from Christopher Nolan? He's already proved that he can do these kinds of films very well. He's done plenty of science fiction. He's done plenty of comic book movies. He has proven that he can do that kind of film really well. What's next for him? Because to have Christopher Nolan be one of the greats, he has to prove that he's a little bit more dynamic than just this one kind of film. And then he comes out and does Dunkirk, which, while I wasn't the biggest fan of Dunkirk, it was a radically different movie from what he's done before, and it proved that he can do more than just that one kind of film that he had done before, while he did those kinds so well. And now his next film is a romantic thriller along the lines of a North by Northwest, as he described. And I was like, that's how you prove yourself to be a great, masterful director, is that you can do more than just one kind of film really well. And that's what we're seeing with Edgar Wright. He did one kind of movie for a while, and while he did those great, and they varied drastically in of themselves, they were all roughly in the same camp. Yeah. And then he does something like Baby Driver, which is a very different film. He's going to do this horror thriller, which is going to be even more different than what we got with Baby Driver and with his previous films. And so evolution and maturation with a director, that is necessary for them to really kind of be great. Because if they're all just one note, are they really that great of a director?
Yeah, I mean, you can be like... it's more like you have a style and you want to hang on to it. You don't want to like abandon what you've been doing your whole life. But you also don't want it to like get old. You don't want it to feel like a gimmick that you're holding on to. He's like, you have to prove that Edgar Wright isn't just the guy that hides everything he does behind his editors, basically. And it's like, okay, I'm going to set you guys up to do all this cool fancy stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then do it. Like, he has to, I don't know. Maybe at one point he felt like he had to prove it to himself after doing so many different movies. And maybe that's why he was so, like, when he made Baby Driver, he's like, okay, we're going to do it this way instead and see what happens. And then, like, when it works out as well as it did, I think I said last time that, like, Edgar Wright, all of Edgar Wright's movies, like in terms of, like, how much money they brought in was, like, $200 million or something.
So, I looked it up.
Yeah.
So, Baby Driver made, like, $280 million. So, it's more.
Anyway, it's drastically...
It might be, like, 400 or something, under 400, or 350 or something. Because, Baby Driver made, like, 280-something million worldwide. And so for all of his films to be under a certain number, that number would probably wouldn't be 3. So it'd probably be more like 350 to 400.
I think when I looked it up, I think I wasn't doing internationally. I think I may have just been doing domestically.
Okay. Yeah, you'd have to do international because that's the total amount the movie made.
I'm just saying that I think the statistic I heard when it was like going over it was the domestic.
Yeah.
But Just like it's just, but the point is that like you look at all of the movies he made before Baby Driver, and then you compare it to Baby Driver, and like Baby Driver in terms of how much money it brought in trumps all of them. So like to get that amount of success from changing up your style a little bit, that's got to be real, like, you know, a pretty good confidence boost to like continue to branch out and see what can you do. Well,
I think Baby Driver is kind of innately a more accessible film. It's a more audience friendly film. Like I think if I could sit down with somebody like my mom, I could probably sit my mom down, and I have shown her Baby Driver, and she really liked Baby Driver. I feel like if I showed her Scott Pilgrim, she would just be completely overwhelmed and would have no idea what's going on.
Right.
But I feel like Baby Driver is made in a way that it is incredibly accessible to people. Yeah. It is an audience-friendly film, but it does not sacrifice the style and the intent and the approach that Edgar Wright brings and is known for, his style. It does not sacrifice that to be audience-friendly. He kind of naturally, dependent upon the narrative, dependent upon the story, what the film is calling for, tones down elements of what we had in other films and builds up other elements. And that in of itself kind of makes it a little bit more friendly and approachable to regular audience members. And I think that's why it made as much as it did.
Yeah, because, I don't know, maybe just proving that Edgar Wright isn't just like a filmmaker movie person. Like he doesn't just do like cool filmmaking techniques that only like people who study film or watch a ton of movies pick up on, or like cult classics, you know, or cult films like Scott Pilgrim, where it's like there's not many of us, but a lot of us really like it. But like that he can branch out into this more, you know, audience, like you said, audience friendly, you know, sort of way of doing things, and still
transcend into the mainstream,
and still be incredibly popular.
Yeah. But I love that, I mean, sometimes popularity comes at the price of quality.
Yeah.
And sometimes to be popular and to get to see more people, you have to take away from what makes something great.
Yeah,
but he never sacrifices that to make Baby Driver. Baby Driver is incredibly accessible to everybody, but it's no less meticulous or talented or detailed or packed with creativity than any of his other films.
Yeah, he's not.
It's just different.
Yeah, I think to put it simply, he didn't sell out. It's probably the most simple way of putting it. And like in one word, he not only broke out of the little bubble, broke out into the mainstream, but like didn't change who he was.
Yeah,
where it you could just keep adding if you want to make films people like, just add a bunch of explosions and giant robots.
Yeah.
And cars and American flags and Megan Fox. Anyway, just saying.
Yeah. So as we move into our final thoughts and wrapping up this discussion, Matt, what are your final thoughts on Baby Driver?
Final thoughts? It's great. It's like I said. It's like I don't know. I think it's either my second or third favorite Edgar Wright movie. It's up there with Shaun of the Dead, but they're so drastically different. Like I don't know how to rate it. Like you could give me one thing to scale it on, and it would be drastically different. So to put those two together just as they are, like it's impossible for me to say. But no, I love Baby Driver. I'm really excited to see what Edgar Wright does in the future. I'm sad Edgar Wright month is done, but anyway. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it was here.
Yeah.
Never watched World's End, but whatever.
So my final thoughts on Baby Driver is that I think this movie is brilliant. I think it's fantastic. I think it is a masterpiece from Edgar Wright. I think the things that he accomplishes and the things that he's done in this film are frankly unprecedented. I've never seen something done quite like this before. It's done in such a great way that it's very subtle, and that it kind of feels a little bit surface level, and then you can dig in so much and so deeply, and it's so meticulous and it's so well crafted. Performances are great. The action is great. The adventure of it is great. Comedy all works. Everything just every element of this film, top notch.
Just there.
And so I adore this movie. It's my favorite Edgar Wright film. So Matt, now that we have reached the final week in Edgar Wright month, looking back, having seen all these movies, what are your biggest takeaways about Edgar Wright?
I don't know. I've never really been able to. I really like being able to just break down every movie. I really like the idea of doing the director themes. I feel like it's something to do every once in a while is really good. It does really change the conversation. It really does allow like the whole month to kind of be like together. Feel like a whole like cohesive thing. But no, Edgar Wright was my favorite director then, and he still is.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
I guess my biggest takeaways is just kind of seeing the evolution of Edgar Wright and seeing how much he changes with each film and how he grows, and just how he refines his craft, how he refines his style, and how it just kind of naturally changes over time. Yeah,
and it's like I said, I'm really excited to see what happens with him.
Yeah,
I don't know how far into I don't remember when I figured out he was doing like the thriller thing, but I am really excited for that.
Yeah, I am too. I am definitely too. So that's going to bring our discussion of Baby Driver to a close, as well as our month of Edgar Wright films.
Already April.
So when we move into May, we're moving into a new theme for movie night tonight. I don't think I've told anyone what the theme is for May. But the May theme that we're going to be watching films for, we're going to be watching and discussing Westerns. And
We're doing Westerns?
We're doing Westerns. What? And the first movie we're going to be watching and discussing is from 1966, The Good, the Bad,
Are we really watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Yes,
oh my God, that's awesome.
Yep.
I love that
movie. We're doing Westerns. So, yes.
Do we have to do accents the whole time?
Yes.
Yay.
So
nice.
All of May, we're going to be watching and discussing Westerns, starting off with The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. So make sure you check out that when it drops on Saturday. Once again, I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár. Thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to thank my panel, Matt Smith, for being here with me today discussing Baby Driver.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad we were able to talk about Baby Driver for the past little bit, a movie that I love. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more content, and be sure to follow us on all of our various social medias at Movie Night TNT. That's Movie Night TNT. There you can find links to our YouTube, to our Spotify, to our iTunes, where new episodes of Movie Night Tonight drops every single Saturday. So all of our previous episodes are up there. You can find all the episodes from Edgar Wright month and the month of war films and the month of romantic comedies going all the way back. You can find those there on those respective outlets. And you can also catch new episodes of Movie Night Tonight, which do drop every Saturday. You can catch there. So until next week, when we discuss The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, thanks for listening.